Good morning, and welcome to the Word of Faith Fellowship radio program. I'm Kim Waits, and I'm here with my daughter Gabrielle Valentine, and we would like to share with you how special prayer has been in our lives. It has meant everything to us, and it's truly a miracle that we're here with you today. I mean, it goes to our relationship with Jesus, and here we are today to share with you everything that God has done in our lives and how special prayer has been to us. I, I mean, many times people will ask me, Kim, you are just so happy. How can you be so happy? And we know everything you've been through in your life. How can you be so happy? I mean, going back to New York City and living in New York City and the pits of New York City, living in the fashion industry and that delusive glamour of sin, and even going to the death of a loved one, of your husband, and how devastating that could have been to you. And it was a devastation. We were so close. We were inseparable. And then even to the point of remarriage and a divorce of a man that was horrible. He was violent. He was abusive. He stole. I mean, I lived a life that was threatened. And I mean, it was a devastating time in my life. How could you be so happy going through all of these things? And I can truly say Jesus did all of this for me and brought me out of that pit. Let's look at Exodus 3 and verse 7. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt. I have heard their cry because of their taskmasters and their oppressors. For I know their sorrows, I know their sufferings, I know their trials, and I have come down to deliver them out of the hand and the power of the Egyptians, and to bring them out of a land to a land that is good and large, a land flowing with milk and honey, a land of plenty. I mean, God heard their sighing. God heard their crying and earnestly remembered their covenant. Let's look at Psalms 126. It said, they who sow in tears shall reap in joy and with singing. And that is the place, as devastating as it was in New York City, as devastating as it was to lose a loved one who I was so close to, as devastating as it was to have a marriage that was full of violence, full of life-threatening situation. God delivered me out of all those things. He set my feet on high ground. He delivered me. And this day I can be happy. And as it says in 1 Thessalonians, it says, be happy in your faith and rejoice and be glad hearted continually. And I can be glad hearted continually because of that relationship that I have with Jesus and that place that I've learned to pray so strong about in my heart. You know, there's not a day that goes by that I think about the time that I was in New York City. I was in a bed of affliction. I was living in New York City in a bed, and I was in pain. I didn't know if I could face another day. I didn't know if I could even get out of that bed that day. I thought, how can I face this day? I didn't even know if I wanted to live another day. And I thought, Jesus, what am I going to do? And it was just prior to that I had visited a church in New York City. And for the first time in my life, I heard prayer. I went in there and I heard strong prayer. I heard strong crying. I heard groaning. It was the first time I'd ever heard prayer like that. I grew up in a Baptist church, going to a Presbyterian church, to a Methodist church. And I knew to follow along with a pastor or repeat a prayer, but I'd never heard prayer like this. And as I laid in that bed that day, God brought me back to that time that I went to that church just prior to that and heard that crying. And I laid in that bed and I said, Jesus, you've got to help me. I need you today, Jesus. He brought me back to that strong crying, to that place of prayer. I need you today, Jesus. If you don't help me, Jesus, I'm not going to make it. And I began praying. I began crying out to God, Jesus, help me. In Romans 8:26, it says, so too, the Holy Spirit comes to our aid and bears us up in our weakness. For we do not know what prayer to offer, nor how to offer it worthily as we ought. But the Spirit himself goes to meet our supplication and pleads in our behalf with unspeakable yearnings and groanings too deep for utterance. The Spirit himself knows our need, and at the right time, he intercedes on our behalf. In Hebrews 5:7, it says, in the days of his flesh, Jesus offered up definite petitions for that which he not only wanted, but needed, and supplications with strong crying and tears to him who was always able to save him out from death. And he was heard because of his reverence toward God, his godly fear, his piety, in that he shrank from the horrors of separation from the bright presence of the Father. And that's where I was that day. I cried out to Jesus with everything in me. I need you, Jesus. I need you, Jesus. I need you, Jesus. I want to live. I want to serve you, Jesus. Let's look at Psalms 138:8. 138:3. In the day when I called, you answered me, and you strengthened me with strength, might, and inflexibility to temptation in my inner self. And that's what Jesus did for me. He answered me that day. I was able to go forth. I was able to do and fulfill the call of God. Once God snatched me out of New York City, once I put my feet on solid ground, I was able to live and go on. In Psalms 18:6, it says, in my distress, when seemingly closed in, I called upon the Lord and cried to my God. He heard my voice, and out of his temple, his heavenly dwelling place, and my cry came before him into his very ears. I mean, there was many times when it says, in my distress, when seemingly closed in. And there was many times in New York City, I was seemingly closed in dark places, on that bed of affliction that day. There was many times being married to a man that stole from me, that committed adultery, that was in drugs, that I didn't know that I could even face the next day. I fought for my life. It was a horrible, devastating time. I felt seemingly closed in. But as it said, I called upon the Lord and cried to my God. And that is what even happened when my first husband passed away. I called upon the Lord. I didn't know if I could face another day. We were so close. I didn't know if I could live another day. I called upon him. God taught me deliverance and how to call upon him and be delivered and not feel that pain and feel the grace to want to live another day. When seemingly closed in, I called upon the Lord and cried to my God, and he heard my voice out of his temple, his heavenly dwelling place. And my cry came before him in his very ears.
And one thing God's taught me about prayer, it's not just when there's a devastating situation or you hit rock bottom or you come into a circumstance that you have no idea what to do or you have no control over. It's every day depending on Jesus and crying out to Jesus. And it's simple throughout your day. Jesus, help me. Yes. Jesus, show me what to do. Jesus, I need you. And out of that place, you can have a relationship with Jesus. He will guide your steps. He will lead you. He will direct your steps and make them firm and make them sure. And I've learned every moment to depend on Jesus, to trust Jesus. In Isaiah 65:1, it says, I let myself be sought by those who did not ask for me. I let myself be found by those who did not seek me. I said, here I am, to the nation Israel, which did not call on my name. And God was speaking in Isaiah to the rebellious people. He called them a rebellious people, Israel, because they did not seek God with their whole heart. God was waiting to be found by them, and they did not turn their hearts to God. And God has so spoken to me and dealt with my heart when I don't consider Jesus worth the knowing. When I don't cry out to him, I'm a rebellious person. When I only pray, when I only cry out to God, when it's something tragic, when it's something that I know I need Jesus for, God is waiting all of the time. And when we don't cry out to him, we cut off his voice and we harden our hearts so that when these situations and circumstances do come up, our heart can be hardened to his voice. And we want to seek him. We want to turn our hearts to him. I've learned every morning when I wake up, no matter what I have going on that day, I say, Jesus, I trust you today. I trust you to lead my steps. I trust you to direct me. I trust you to guide me. I'm an attorney. I'm in court pretty much every day. Some mornings I wake up with a lot of weight on my mind, a lot of things concerning me, uncertain how a trial is going to go, how things are going to turn out in court. And I've learned as I'm getting ready, there's a scripture that says, roll your works upon the Lord. And I've learned, just, Jesus, I trust you. I know that you always hear my cry and that you will hear my cry. You will answer me today, Jesus. You will direct and guide my steps. And it's amazing the mornings that I turn to God, throughout my day that I turn to God, that I trust Jesus, how God supernaturally works out my day. My cases work out, things that seemed impossible work out, and I go to bed thinking, God, I know your hand was on my life today. And I am learning to live that way every day. Even if it's a day where there's not something difficult, it could be the most mundane thing you do every day. For me, it may just be in my office. I'm not in court. It could be something that you do every day that's very routine. But don't for a minute think, I can do this myself. Depend on Jesus. Cry out to Jesus, because Jesus' thoughts and his plans are so much higher than ours. And I've learned, I pray every morning, God, direct my steps. Help me to reach the people you want me to. Because I've realized how many times are our hearts not open to God. We're not praying. We're not crying out to God. And how much more does God have for us that we're missing because we're not submitted to God? We are not crying out and depending on Jesus and trusting Jesus. And that's what God's taught me every day through my day. Many times God stops me and says, where are you crying out to me? Where are you seeking me? And as I said, God's taught me it's simple. You may not be able to get on the floor in your closet and cry out to God, but as I'm standing in that courtroom and I don't know what to say to a difficult witness, God, show me what to say right now. Help me right now, Jesus. As I'm on the phone with a client and I don't know what to do, God, give me wisdom what to do. And he wants, like I said, he wants to help us. He wants us to turn to him. In Isaiah 30, verse 18, it says, "Therefore the Lord waits expectantly." God is waiting expectantly. He expects us to cry out to him and longs to be gracious to you. And therefore he waits on high to have compassion on you. Blessed, happy, fortunate are all those who long for him, since he will never fail them. And we are a blessed people if we long for him, if we seek him throughout our day, if we cry out to him. It says he will never fail them. O you people in Zion, you will weep no longer. He will most certainly be gracious to you at the sound of your cry for help. When he hears it, he will answer you. And it's a simple cry, Jesus, help me. I turn my heart to you. And it says, when he hears it, he will answer you. And your ears will hear a word behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it, when you turn to the right and when you turn to the left. And that's how God is teaching me to walk every day. That I cry out to God, that I let him lead me, and that I listen for his voice. Because when we cry out to him, he will speak to us. He will tell us how to walk every day. When you turn to the right hand and when you turn to the left. And it can be very simple things. You can't find your phone. You can't find your keys. Jesus, show me where it is. And I've learned that when you cry out to God, you have to cry out to God in faith, knowing that he hears and answers you. And I've seen Jesus show up so many times in my life that every time I cry out, I have faith. I know he's going to answer me. When I cry out in the mornings for God to lead my steps, every time it works out. And I know that's all I have to do is ask him and he will hear and answer me. And one very distinct time in my life that built my faith, I was taking the LSAT exam, which is the law school entrance exam. And I was on a section of the test that there was several different sections and you had to do them all right to keep up with your time and to finish in time. And I realized I had totally missed a whole section. And it threw off the rest of it. I corrected it. I got to the end and my heart's pounding. I was getting ready to start the next section that was generally a strong section that carried a lot of points for me, but I was nervous, I was flustered, and I knew that next section had to carry me. And I put my pencil down, and in my heart I said, I am not starting this section till I know Jesus is with me. And I put my pencil down in that test. I put my head on that desk and I said, Jesus, you are with me, and you will show me, give me peace. That torment, that nervousness left. I picked up my pencil, and the whole time I'm thinking, you don't have time to pray. You can't stop. This is a time test. You've got to go. I said, I don't care. I know Jesus will show up for me. And he did. And I scored the highest on that section that I had scored on any practice test. And that built my faith. Through law school, I always knew we would go into final exams that carried 70 to 80% of your score for that test. And I would stay up studying, only get 2 and 3 hours of sleep. And I knew when I prayed and cried out to God, God always came through for me on those tests, and I always made a good grade. The times that I didn't and thought I knew how to do it, or I didn't consider Jesus, I just did it out of habit, I didn't do as good. And like I said, God is waiting for us to cry out to him. And, Mom was talking about everything she went through in her life and all the difficult times. And out of that, one thing that's very special in our relationship is where she raised me to seek God and to cry out to God. I remember ever since I was very little, any need that I had, if there was something I wanted or needed, she'd always tell me, ask God, believe Jesus for it. If I had a problem, we would always pray. That was the first thing we would do, is pray. Every night we would cry out to God and pray. And that just built faith in my heart that I know if there's ever a problem, the first thing I do is cry out to Jesus and pray, and he hears my cry. And even today, that's still where we walk. I may, be older, but I have that relationship with her. I can go say, Mom, this is what's going on. I have a court case that I need Jesus to come through for me, or this is what's bothering me. And we pray together, and God always comes through. And in James 5:16, it says, confess to one another your faults and pray for one another, that you may be restored to a spiritual tone of mind and heart. And not only does God want us to pray for our personal needs, for what we need personally, but He wants us to pray for one another. He wants us to be open-hearted with each other. And if you have a close friend, if you have a family member, share with them your needs so they can pray with you. They can seek God with you. And if you're someone's friend, be aware of them. Seek God with them. Pray for what they need. And it says, the earnest, heartfelt, continued prayer of a righteous man availeth much, and makes tremendous power available, dynamic in its working. And the key is there. It's earnest. It's heartfelt. And heartfelt is believing God. You don't give up. If you don't see the answer immediately, you don't give up. You don't doubt God. You believe that He still hears your cry and He is working. And it's continued prayer, and it availeth much. And we can never downplay the power of prayer. We can never doubt God. And in James 1, it says, if anyone is deficient in wisdom, let him ask of the giving God. But it must be in faith that he asks. Once again, when you cry out to God, don't cry out to God doubting, well, I don't know if He's going to hear me. I've cried out to God for 6 months about this, and I'm not seeing any result. Ask in faith, knowing that your prayer availeth much. Every time you cry out to God, it is working. And it says, with no wavering, no hesitating, and no doubting. Because if you waver, if you hesitate when you pray, if you doubt that God is hearing you, you are like a billowing surge out at sea that is tossed to and fro. And it says, let not that person imagine that he will receive anything he asks for from God. So I just want to stress the importance of when God hears your cry, you know He is working on your behalf. It builds your faith. And don't doubt God when you cry out to Him. And He will come through for you every time.
In Hebrews 2:18, it says, for because He Himself in His humanity has suffered in being tempted, tested, and tried, He is able immediately to run to the cry of us and to assist and relieve those who are being tempted and tested and tried, and who are therefore are being exposed to suffering. And that's what Gabrielle has been sharing. And we can look back. We had an incident several years back. We were coming home from South Carolina. We were in a 4-lane highway, and I was driving, and I looked up, and all of a sudden I see a car coming directly in front of my car, head on to our car. And immediately out of us, both of us cried out, help us, Jesus. We need you right now, Jesus. That car hit us head on directly. It ended up hitting us, going to the side embankment. But Jesus was there for us. He came immediately there for us. He saved us. We walked out of that car. We got out of that car. I don't even know if we had a scratch. God delivered us. But it was a place then, because it was so natural to us. We love praying. We love crying out to God. That was the first expression that came out of us, was a help me, Jesus. We need you right now, Jesus. And Jesus was right there for us. He was right there to assist us. He heard our cry, and He heard and knew we needed Him. It was a miracle. It was a miracle. We walked out of that car. It was a miracle. Even the other driver, nothing. She was not killed. She was not destroyed. It was a miracle. But that was a place that we lived. And it wasn't, a lot of times, if you don't know Jesus, it'll be a cursing that will come out of you, or you'll get angry when something happens to you. But when you run to Jesus and you know Jesus and you have that relationship with Jesus, as Gabrielle has been talking about, immediately there can be a cry, Jesus, help me. I need you, Jesus, right thin. I need you. It says in Psalms 34:17, when the righteous cry for help, the Lord hears and delivers them out of all their distress and troubles. And in verse 19, it says, many evils confront the consistently righteous, but the Lord delivers them out of them all. And we can truly say, from New York City to North Carolina, when God snatched me out of New York City and brought me to North Carolina, he's heard my cry. Even to as much as a couple years ago, I was walking because I like to exercise, and I was walking and I tripped. And literally my whole body came out from under me, and I landed on the pavement, on that concrete, as hard as possible on my side. And I laid there. I couldn't move. I was in excruciating pain. I couldn't move. And all I could do was, Jesus, help me. It was a cry from my heart. I need you right now. I was crying out for God. He heard me. And this day, I had surgery, but this day, my leg is stronger than it ever has been. I can leap. I can walk. I am stronger than I've ever been. God heard my cry. He delivered me. He saved me from that day.
And once again, I just want to reiterate, we want to be the righteous ones that call out to him and seek him. We don't want to be the wicked that the Bible references, where we have a hard heart because we don't seek God. Like Mom said, when something happens, the first thing that comes up in my heart is, Jesus, help me. That's the first thought that comes to my mind. And in Isaiah 55:6, it says, seek, inquire for, and require the Lord while he may be found, claiming him by necessity and by right. He is our necessity, and we have that right to seek him. That is what he is for in our lives. Call upon him while he is near. And the more you cry out to him, if you're in a hard place, the more you seek him, the more natural it will be for you to cry out to him. He's the only one that can deliver you. I interact every day with so many people that are in devastating situations. They don't know how to set one foot in front of the other. They don't see any way out. And all I can tell them is, just if you can say, help me, Jesus. If you can say, help me, Jesus, he will run to your cry and he will deliver you. And I just want to encourage everyone, cry out, seek him with everything, whatever you're facing. It could be tragic, but it could just be every day, your everyday life. And that's what God's taught us. And we're grateful for the prayer and what God's done in our lives. And this morning, we would like to sing a special song for you about who God is and that he is our strength and our shield, and we can trust him with our lives.
I will sing praises to the Lord with all my heart. I will sing glorious praises to your name. I will rejoice and exalt in you, my Lord. Yesterday, today, forever, you're the same. Oh, Most High, you are my stronghold. When troubles come, you're my hiding place. Oh, Most High, those who know you trust you. You will not forsake the ones. Oh, you will not forsake the ones. Oh, you will not forsake the ones who seek your face. I will sing praises to the Lord with all my heart. I will sing glorious praises to your name. I will rejoice and exalt in you, my Lord. Yesterday, today, forever, you're the same. Oh, Most High, you are my stronghold. When troubles come, trust you. You will not forsake the ones. Oh, you will not forsake the ones. Oh, you will not forsake the ones who seek your face.
And like the song said, Jesus will not forsake us. When we seek him, he is truly our hiding place. We can trust him with our lives. And you can turn to him this day. Have a cry in your heart. Jesus, help me. It can be that simple. I need you, Jesus. Help me, Jesus, whatever your need is. We thank you for being with us today. You can be with us Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8:30 to 9 o'clock on WCAB, or visit our website of wordoffaithfellowship.org. Thank you. We love you.